which I think, again, sales is able to do that. You're able to really, yeah, it's a mirror. I think that sales is a mirror, and it holds a lot of times our prospects are holding up a mirror to us and showing us what we need to heal within ourselves and what we need to work on.
Two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Weight of El Marco. I am your host, Marco Antonio Alvarez. And yes, as you can see on the other side of the screen, or to the left or right of me, depending on how it shows up, we have a very special guest today, none other than the queen herself, Nathalie Asuncion.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's
What
a
an
pleasure.
intro.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being here for episode number 15, 1-5. So we've made it to 15. So thank you.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said yes. I only took coffee and tacos to bribe you.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you about that. Should I be expecting a Venmo like after? Like what's the time frame?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
paying me for this, right?
I
Okay.
got a cousin up in Canada. Yeah, whatever Mexican restaurant, just drop my name and they'll hook it up.
Amazing. Yeah, I just want to get that one order of business out of the way. I just want to know what the compensation was, but now we can actually get to it.
What do you want? Like 2 tacos and a coffee? I mean, how's this going to work out?
I'm thinking like 3 tacos and 1 coffee.
All
I'm
right.
not
All right.
Yeah,
What kind of tacos are we talking? Carne asada, pollo, like.
all of them. I want all of them.
Okay. Well, speaking about tacos, so we have definitely a mutual love for the humble taco.
Yes.
And we're just going to start there with food because we just are. What's your favorite kind of taco?
That this is tough. I feel like when I was in Mexico, I did have a lot of like chicken tacos, a lot of fish tacos. I had a lot of carnitas and el pastor. I feel
Mm.
like all four of those would probably tie for first. I would have to really sit down and think about like what my favorite is because I feel like whenever I go for tacos, I have to have all four of those.
Wait, what
It's
about carne asada? Are you?
no, it's not one of my favorites.
Wow.
That maybe I just haven't gone to the right places. Maybe I haven't gone to the right places. But it was never one of the ones that I like bought.
Well, speaking of all the right places, how long were you down in Mexico this last time, and where were you?
Yeah, so I booked a one-way ticket to Mexico for the winter because I live in Canada, in Toronto, and it was just a very like spontaneous thing. I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be here anymore. Get me out of here. I just booked a one-way ticket to Mexico. But I started off in Playa del Carmen. So it was just easy for me to just fly there. And then I spent a little bit of time in Tulum, a little bit of time in Merida. I spent some time in Puebla and then also Mexico City.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that those are all the locations.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all I did.
So I've been to Tulum. It's beautiful. When I was a kid, I think I was like 12. I hung out in Merida for part of the summer. I got family down there. I have family in Mexico City as well. I've never been to Puebla. Um, Mexico City, I haven't been there since I was a kid. So we're looking at like 30 some odd years ago. You've
Yeah.
been there recently. What was your experience like? I mean, it's still the largest city in the world, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
how many million people live there?
I think it's just shy of 24.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was massive. To be honest, I don't really know what I was expecting. Everyone was telling me, "Oh, it's a really, really large city." So I think that I was expecting it to be comparable to Toronto,
How
but
big's Toronto?
that's a great question. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
Nope.
not sure the exact population, but it definitely Mexico City was much bigger than that. But yeah, it was interesting because right before I went there, I was getting mixed reviews from people who know me. And some of them, half of the people that know me were saying, I don't think that you're really going to like it there. I don't think that you, and I was actually planning on being there. I for a whole month because I was, I want to stay put for kind of like 3 to 4 weeks at a time. So I booked an Airbnb for a whole month, and people are saying, "You're crazy. You don't need that much time in Mexico City." Like, and I don't think that you're going to like it. And then the other half of my friends that have been there were saying, "I think that you're going to thrive there." To be honest, I wasn't unsure when I first got there if I was going to like it or not, but I had a really amazing experience. And if I was going to live in Mexico, and who knows, that's not out of the realm of possibility. I do actually feel like I would live in Mexico City. For me, it's a very livable city. And I just liked how, diverse it was. There was so much to see and do, so many different neighborhoods. The food was incredible. So I actually had a really amazing experience. And it was my last stop in Mexico. And I'm really happy that that was my last stop, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, so food. What was what was the pollution like? Just with
To be honest, that was one of the things that people were saying. It's really bad. Like the air quality is really poor. It wasn't terrible. I think it's just because of the time of year that I was there. I was there in February, like January to middle of Feb, and it wasn't terrible. It wasn't actually as bad as I was expecting it to be. But yeah, it's not necessarily a clean city, but it wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be.
okay. All right. How was Puebla for you?
Puebla, I loved. I mean, I went there for 10 days. In retrospect, I probably wouldn't have gone for a full 10 days. I feel like it's kind of one of those places where I also stayed more in like the Cholula area, right? So I feel like if you're going to go, if I were to go back again, I would probably stay in Puebla City and then just do a day trip or maybe like a weekend in Puebla. But I stayed in Puebla for 10 days. It's definitely on the outskirts. Like you have to, travel like 25 minutes to get to the city. But Puebla is beautiful. The people there are incredibly friendly. The food was also amazing there. So it basically I just judge everything by how good their food is. And so Puebla was quite good. It was really good actually. It was really, really good. And I also had really amazing experiences in restaurants. The service was really great. I also, have really high standards, I think, when it comes to service, which I never realized until I was traveling. But being Canadian and being someone who has worked in customer service prior to what we do now, I was in the service industry for 14 years. And I
Wow.
always feel like my standard for customer service was always really high for me personally. I always wanted to be, you know, the highlight of someone's day. When you go into a store or you go into a restaurant, you get really bad service, how you're talking about that for, a couple hours after how bad the experience was.
Yeah.
I wanted, but it's also the same when you have a really great experience, right? And so I just wanted to be that person that was known for really good customer service. So I never realized until I was traveling for the last couple of months how high I actually placed that good service. So in Mexico, I will say I was very, very happy with the level of service that I was receiving. People were very friendly, very welcoming, very willing to help. So yeah, Puebla, I will say I had a lot of really great experiences.
That's awesome. Did you did you feel pretty safe while traveling in Mexico?
I did. I did. I've actually talked about this. I had a lot of, because I was traveling by myself, right?
Hmm.
So inevitably, I do think, you hear a lot of different things about Mexico, but especially traveling to Mexico as a female on
Hmm.
your own, I
Oh
think
yeah.
that obviously you're going to have a little bit of a guard up, but I'll be honest, I did not feel unsafe once. I had a lot of people worried about me, reaching out saying, apparently this is going on in Mexico. Are you okay? And I truthfully did not feel unsafe once. Also, I do want to preface it by saying that I usually go to bed around 8 o'clock, 8:30. So like I don't really put myself in an opportunity for anything bad to happen. Because even my Airbnb host in Mexico City actually was saying to me, it's pretty safe. And obviously, no matter where you are in Mexico, be careful, obviously, and be smart, which I am. I have a very good intuition. If something feels off, I'm just not going to do it. But he said I definitely wouldn't walk around by yourself after like 10:30. I was like, oh yeah, it's not going to be a problem. I will be in my REM cycle at 10:30. So we have nothing to worry about.
There's some really sketchy neighborhoods in Mexico City.
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's some neighborhoods that I So I don't know if you're familiar with Santa Muerte, with the so it's essentially what they've done. Santa Muerte is a combination of the Aztecian goddess of death and the Grim Reaper combined, and they've created this fetish cult. And a lot of the cartels will have like the patron saint Santa Muerte, which means holy death. I think I already said, anyways. And so there's a particular neighborhood in Mexico City that is all just decked out with Santa Muerte shit everywhere. And it's like one of those things where if you go into that neighborhood, you're going to become a sacrifice.
Right.
So it's and for obvious reasons. Like if you don't see those things and you're like, oh, this looks cool, yeah, that would probably be something I would do. But since
Yeah.
you're already in bed by 8, all right, cool. Well, definitely don't put that one on your list when you go back to Mexico City unless you have like an armed guard with you, right?
Yeah, precisely.
Right.
Precisely. That's really good advice, actually. Sound advice.
Oh, cool. So I want to take it back to service when you were talking about just being in the food service and just the experience of just having great service while you're in Mexico. And I want to tie it into our mutual love for coffee. Um, by the way, do you know about L-theanine, an amino acid that you can take before you drink coffee that eases the jitters of coffee?
I have never heard of that. But
Okay.
also, I don't really get impacted. I almost sometimes wonder if coffee even has an effect on me anymore. I think that a lot of people do need a cup of coffee in the morning to wake up, supposedly, but I'm like wide awake right away. I have a ton of energy as soon as I wake up. I think for me, it's just like a ritual. I like the taste of it. I also just feel like, yeah, it's just a part of, yeah, so I don't necessarily know if I experience the jitters or anything like that, but that's good to know.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, just I wanted to mention it. I was thinking about it today when I was like, oh, I wonder if she knows about that since she loves coffee so much.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna tie it into when I go to a restaurant. One of the first things that I judge that restaurant on, it's the quality of the coffee that it serves.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be a crappy cup of coffee, I'm already in my mind. I'm like, oh man, this food's gonna suck.
Yeah. So I don't really have coffee like maybe if I'm going for breakfast, totally. And sometimes places serve just like regular whatever it's called, just like, I don't really enjoy those. I like to order if I'm gonna order a coffee, I'll have like a specialty coffee. Um but I do agree with you. Sometimes places, when like the coffee tastes really burnt or like it's been sitting there for 6 hours, you're like, okay, let's maybe put some effort into this, into this experience a little bit.
It's being reheated from the day before. They're like, there's still some in here. Hold on, just drop it in the microwave. They're not even gonna notice,
Yeah,
dude. It's all good.
they throw like everybody's like leftover at the bottom. Yeah, they just throw it back into the pot,
I
reheat
seen
it.
that. I saw that at a restaurant once, right? At the coffee machine, the dude just put in like fresh grounds and didn't remove the old ones. And I was like, dude,
Ew.
no wonder.
No wonder I'm the only person in here, man. No wonder.
Yeah, totally. They're like, come in, come in. Do you speak Spanish?
So believe it or not, it was actually my first language. I was actually born in Spain, but now I feel like it's unfortunately a little bit more conversational. When I was in Mexico, though, I think that immersing myself into the culture was really good for me because a lot of I was able to practice first and foremost. So I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily fluent again, but I was able to have longer conversations with people, like in Ubers, in restaurants. I could, comfortably order a meal in Spanish. So that was a good measure, but I'm planning on being in Spain for a few months this summer, and I'm really really hoping that by the end of the summer I'm maybe not fully fluent, but more fluent than I am right now. So,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, yeah. Because the thing about Mexico is that there's so many tourists there. So, inevitably, if they can tell that it's not your first language, they're going to speak to you in English. So a lot of times if I was struggling, I could just get by speaking English, but ideally I would just practice my Spanish. So I think that Spain will allow me to do that because there's not as many English speakers there, I don't think.
Right.
Certainly not a place that I'm planning on going. So
Um, how did you end up getting born in Spain?
Um, so my dad was a computer engineer for many, many years, and he worked for a lot of startup companies, American startup companies. And so I'm not really sure how we ended up in Spain necessarily, but his work took us there. So yeah, that's where I was born. And yeah, we kind of moved around all over Europe, honestly, growing up. And then they moved us to Canada, where I now live, when I was 12. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
oh, wow. Okay, so you were born in Spain, all over Europe the first 12 years of your life?
Yeah, yeah. So just kind of moving around. We lived in Wales for a few years, lived in Belgium, and then we moved to Canada. So I've actually been able to see a lot of Europe actually, because Belgium is like so small. So you're literally able to drive to different countries. You could honestly probably be in 3 or 4 countries in one day because it's so close to everything. But yeah, I've been fortunate. I've seen a lot of Europe, growing up, and I think that that's probably where my love for Europe kind of came from. But yeah, I moved around a ton when I was a kid, a lot.
Now you mentioned you're going to go back to Spain this summer. Where in Spain?
I think I'm going to do the same thing that I did when I was in Mexico. I'm hoping to kind of bounce around. So I'm going to fly into Malaga in a couple of weeks here. So, like, literally, actually, in about a week and a half, I'm going to leave. I'm going to probably be there for a month. And then I want to probably just explore the coast of Spain. I'm going to play it by ear. I don't have anything set in stone right now because that's what I did in Mexico and it was really fun. Just kind of being able to decide, okay, where do I want to be in a couple of weeks? And kind of just doing it that way. But I have a general idea of what I want to do. So I think moving up the coast, it's going to be my game plan. I want to do Valencia after, Mallorca, Barcelona for a little bit, and then, kind of explore surrounding countries from there. I'm really excited.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so this leads me to next question. I'm gonna preface it with this: is that you and I we met in the UCM, right? We
We did.
met in JD Daly's Undeniable Closer Mastermind. And for those who are listening, going, "What's that?" Well, it's essentially I would say a sales personal development mastermind that, from my experience, has been one of the best investments I have ever made, and I'm sure you probably feel the same. You said you did 14 years in the food service, right? In hospitality, was it, or
No, sorry. So I worked 14 years in customer service. So I
customer
actually,
service? Gotcha.
yeah, I actually did more traditional retail sales. I basically worked in retail from 17 up until 2 years ago.
Gotcha.
When I yeah, joined JD in the so customer service based, yeah.
So what happened 2 years ago that made you want to go in that direction?
Honestly, I think like many other people, it just, when I was 20, so I started working when I was 17. I was in high school, and like I said, I was working customer service. I was a cashier at a drugstore, and that was my first experience actually having someone tell me that they saw leadership qualities in me. So imagine being 17 years old, and one of my supervisors at the time, they said, you have such great leadership qualities. We see so much potential in you. We'd love to eventually develop you into, key holder or some sort of supervisor. So at 17, to me, that instilled a lot of belief like, okay, maybe leadership is something that I do potentially really well. And then I actually moved up really quickly in all of the jobs that I had. And then when I was 21, during the time that I was in college, I went to school for fashion management, and I never really 100% knew what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to work in fashion, whether that was PR or marketing. Like I didn't quite know, but at the time I was working in a retail, so it was kind of, it kind of made sense for me to work in retail given that I was, going to school for fashion. But right when I graduated, I actually got promoted to, I got a job as an assistant manager, and I was working for Victoria's Secret, which, now I feel like it's kind of declined, but at the time it was such a large company. And so to be an assistant manager at 21 years old, to be honest, I'm not sure how familiar you are with like the retail space, but it's actually really challenging to kind of get into that role when you're young.
Mhm.
And so I personally thought that I had it made. I was like, wow, I'm 21. Most people have to work so long to get to this role. They want to work a full-time job after school. And I already had all of that before I even graduated. So I felt really accomplished. But in the back of my mind, it was just one of those feelings. I always knew it wasn't forever. I knew that it was only going to be a temporary thing. And so at 21 years old, I kind of gave myself deadlines. I was like, okay, let me do this because I actually really enjoyed my job. I loved the people development aspect of what I did. I was really learning how to be good at sales. I was teaching other people how to be good at sales. And I loved it. At the time, honestly, I would say, passionate about it, but I knew that it wasn't a forever thing because the schedule was kind of, all over the place. And anyway, so I told myself, okay, I'm going to do this until maybe I'm 25. And by 25, I'm going to really figure out what it is that I want to do. And maybe I can start my own company. And I always thought that I wanted to work for myself. And then 25 rolled around and I was still in it. I wasn't necessarily happy. I could feel myself kind of getting bored with my job, but there was always something I don't know. I think I got really comfortable in that space because I was good at it. So, when you get really good at something, you just get really complacent. And honestly, I think that retail gets a really bad rap. And people think, oh, retail, customer service, like you're just, basically folding clothes all day. There's so many things that I think I learned during my time there. Working in retail, and I was always just kind of searching for a new challenge. But what that translated for me was just looking for other jobs, like bigger companies or then startup companies where I was able to develop processes and policies and help open stores. And those are all very temporary things for me where I was being challenged in the moment, but I would still hit that wall really, really quickly. Like after a couple of months, I'm like, yeah, this isn't it. And I thought for a while, the retail, it's again, I learned so much. I'm very grateful for my time there, but you don't own your schedule. It's very
Right.
long hours around Christmas. I mean, forget it. You have after end of October until the beginning of February, you can't book any time off. So
Yeah.
my holidays were always very rushed. I didn't like that. And, so I thought, what would make me happy? And so I thought finding a 9 to 5 was the answer. So then I found a 9 to 5 and I had a set schedule. You're working a 9 to 5. I had Sundays and Mondays off. And then I got that set schedule and I was still not happy. So I was like, what is it exactly that I really, really want? And for years, I would say from 26, 27 years old onwards, I was looking for an out, whether and I always kind of knew that I wanted to have, some sort of business. I wanted to be able to work for myself. Those are the big things for me. I really wanted to work for myself. Ideally, I wanted to own my own time. I wanted to be able to design what my days look like. And I wanted to also be able to travel because here in Canada, you have like 2 weeks of vacation every single year. It's nothing, right? So I had kind of looked into a couple of different avenues to be able to break away from that kind of rat race, but nothing really actually took off. And then, yeah, 2 years ago, I guess technically now 3 years ago, I came across an ad. And the thing about the ad was that it was literally me. Okay, so many people are like, oh, I came through this ad. But for me, it was me to a T because this person was working in retail, making $14 an hour, like wondering, is this all that there is to life? Like literally spoke to my soul. And I was like, yes, I'm working in retail and I'm like, it literally just sucks the life out of you. So, anyways, I was like, okay, maybe this could be something else that I can potentially explore. And so I did, and that's actually how I started Googling, and then that's how I initially found JD's group. And I kind of followed JD for many, many months. And, I like many others, I purchased this little baby course and I was like, okay, amazing. And I actually really love sales. I truly do. I think that it's such an amazing skill set to have. And yeah, I kind of explored it for a little bit and I was like, maybe this could be the thing. Like, I had never really given up hope that I was going to eventually find it out, but I tried a lot of different things. Like, I had looked into a couple of different business opportunities, but this was the one thing for me anyways that actually like made sense, a lot of transferable skills because I was already kind of familiar with sales in general. And yeah, the rest is history. But honestly, what what actually pushed me was having I think that you kind of almost have to get really pissed off. For some people, not always, but I think for me, I had to have a really, and I think that this goes back to you have to have self awareness. Some people don't have any awareness at all, right? But for me, I was like, okay, I've been talking about breaking away from, you know, the corporate slash, the rat race for so many years. And when is it actually going to happen? And I had to actually have a conversation with myself like, well, have I actually fully committed to anything up until this point? And I hadn't. If I was being honest with myself, I was like, because I already knew that I had a job, I had that security. So that was number one. But also I just wasn't pissed off enough yet. I had to get to that point where I was super fed up with my situation. And I had to ask myself, like, when is it going to be like I had to get to the point where I was so fed up with my situation and I was so tired of just saying, okay, this year it's going to be different. This year is going to be different. Like I actually had to make that decision. And so in 2021, I remember January 2021, I was like, no, this is the year. I'm going to make last year, 2020, the last year that I'm actually talking about doing something different and I'm actually going to do it. Like that was the first time that I feel like I really truly committed. And so when I had this conversation with Hunter, who you and I both know, believe it or not, at one point Hunter was enrollment at UCM, not the networking master. But I had a call with Hunter, and yeah, I was like, well, I had so much fear because it was the first time I had invested in anything, and I was like, am I really going to do this? But I had to keep going back to that conversation. I was like, I made myself a promise in January that I was going to actually do whatever it took to make this work, and I was actually going to follow through on a commitment. For the first time in my life, I'm actually going to follow through, and I made that decision. And so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And yeah, best investment ever because I was able to leave my job at the time in 30 days. I left in 30 days.
Wow.
And that I feel like that just goes to show, I mean, don't get me wrong, I got let go from that position 3 weeks after. That's a whole different story. But in 30 days. And I feel like that just kind of goes back to the power of when you make that decision. But it started off with me. I was like, I'm really just pissed off with my situation. Like I was so fed up with my situation that was like, for some people that really is the motivation. It's like you want to get away from something, right? For some people, it's like, what do I want to work towards? I think that that's incredibly powerful. But for me, I was like, what do I want to get away from? And that was like, that's what kicked me into like high gear. I was like, I'm so sick and tired of, yeah, not owning my time, being
Right.
overworked, underpaid, not really being, I didn't really feel valued at the time either. So yeah. So that was, a roundabout way of telling you that I think for me, I just had to get really pissed off. And that's ultimately what pushed me into pursuing this 2 years ago. It's crazy. It went by so fast.
Oh man. That's yeah, it's like that. It's nothing, right? Is
Nothing.
that it's that whole like sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, right? And having to make that change.
Yeah, 100%.
And that it's funny because I think the majority of us have, seen that ad, right? And there's that part where, we make so many jokes about it, but then also having gratitude for that ad that it actually existed to bring us into that next stage development with, JD and Hunter and John and, and everybody there. Um, and so you mentioned that, that you got pissed and that's what pushed you. And that's what drove you to that next step to make that decision to essentially start breaking those chains of the old life. Is that is that still the same for you when it comes to your like decision making process, or has that shifted over time?
It's definitely shifted. I mean, I definitely don't think that I'm annoyed with my situation anymore. Like, I'm actually very grateful because yeah, sometimes I think about just where I was. I never want people to think that, and I think that this is why I talk so much about the journey
Mm-hmm.
because there are different levels to this game, right? And I never want people to I think that people who kind of see where I am now, and I have conversations all the time with people that I'm just now connecting with that kind of see what I'm doing with my life. I'm able to travel full time. Um, but I am very open about the fact that it literally took me a long time to get here. I was making a lot of really bad decisions you know, after quitting my full-time job. Like I said, I got let go. And then I spent the next year really making really poor decisions in terms of the offers that I was choosing. I was definitely staying in offers for a little bit too long. I wasn't always leveraging JD because I like knew what he was going to tell me to do, and it wasn't what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
And I was like,
totally.
okay, well, I know what you're going to say, and it's not what I want to hear. So I'm just going to kind of, I think that everyone has that idea that what he says is the blueprint, but I'm the exception. Like I'm going to be the one person that that doesn't work for. And
Yeah,
so, you know, so it took a long time, but then I just think about like this last year, how much of my life has changed in the whole trajectory of my life changed in 1 year. That's nothing. If you think about like that is literally nothing in comparison to the rest of your life. Like it's actually crazy. But now I think that what motivates me is not so much because I've gotten away from what I was trying to escape before. Like
hmm
and I would never go back. But now it's like what inspires me and motivates me is seeing other people in this space, people like JD, other people in you know, in the mentorship who are ahead of me in a lot of different ways, right? And also just people that I'm networking with and meeting, they inspire me to see there's just as much as I feel so much gratitude for where I am right now, I know that this is just the beginning. And so that kind of that's really what fuels me and my performance and my decision making process now. It's like, well, what are now my new goals? Because I feel like I've hit all of my initial goals. Now, what do I want? How can I continue to expand? And so, really making decisions from like, now, what do I actually want? What more do I want? Right. So yeah, I definitely feel like it's shifted a lot, which thankfully it has, because I feel like, yeah, operating from that place of like, yeah, I'm really mad, it wasn't like sustainable for me personally, but now I'm constantly just working towards like what more can I accomplish, because I've been able to prove to myself that I'm actually capable of achieving things that truly a few years ago were just honestly they were pipe dreams. I was like, I don't actually know. I think that in my heart I knew that it was possible, and I always knew that I was going to do something great. I just didn't know when it was going to happen, and there's always that little bit of doubt. As much as I knew that I was capable, I there was always that little bit of doubt, like I don't know if it's actually ever going to happen for me. And now I've proven to myself that I am actually capable of doing a lot of things that I say I'm gonna do. So now I just want to prove that to myself with other things, you know?
hmm So the the documentation of your journey. I joined the UCM in July of no, sorry, it was October of 2021,
Okay.
right? So like 9 months later, and so we've been friends since then, and I've been watching you document your journey and just this essentially this beautiful story that you've been telling, the ups and downs and everything like that. And so then it's the thing, right? When you talk about the doubt that you've had with yourself and stuff like that. And how do you, what's your process to push through times when you have the negative mindset come in, when those things come in? Because none of us are never going to be rid of that thing, right? Of that voice, of that self doubt, and that thing that I'm always experiencing a continual sense of imposter syndrome with everything that I get in, right? So I'm curious on your process, like how do you push through?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think for me, it's asking myself whatever it is that I'm experiencing in the moment, whatever thought I'm experiencing in the moment. I ask myself, is it ultimately true? Like, is
Mm,
it ultimately true? If I tell myself, oh, I don't necessarily know if I'm ready for this next step, is that ultimately true? If I believe I don't know if I'm 100% deserving of this, whether it be money, position, role, is it ultimately true? And the answer is almost always no. That's just a belief that I have created in my own mind. So then I tell myself, well, what do I want to believe? What do I want to believe? And so, sometimes when I don't feel ready for a role, which has happened many, many times, if someone sees the belief in me and they're giving me this opportunity, learn? Can I learn the skill set? Can I develop in that area? And what is the belief that I want to have? And the belief is always, well, if someone sees that belief in me, they're going to lend me their belief until I'm able to create it for myself. And I know, because I've proven it to myself time and time again, that I can figure it out, right? So then I just cultivate a belief. I cultivate the evidence that supports that new belief until it actually becomes reality. So I kind of talk myself through, I kind of coach myself through certain situations where I'm like, I've been unsure before, and then I was able to develop that certainty the more that I did it. So this is going to be just like that. It's going to be another situation where I don't 100% know what's going to happen, but one thing is for damn sure, I'm never going to find out what if I'm capable of doing this unless I actually just do it. So just do it. And then in the process, I'm gathering evidence that supports that new belief system. And then next thing you know, you're not necessarily a pro, but you're so much more comfortable at this thing that you were previously scared of, right? I feel like almost everything in life that has started off as a complete unknown, I only developed that confidence just by doing it. So it's kind of the same with anything moving forward.
100%. Do it despite the feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We talk about that so much. And it's such a simple concept, right? And I think that so many times, and that's also, it takes a lot of time and work, but it's like, regardless of how you're feeling, you have to do it anyways. Because, and I think that the reason why I'm able to push through so much easier now, it's because in the last, like I mentioned, in last year, the whole trajectory of my life has completely changed. And I spent so much time, I would say the majority of my 20s, wanting more for myself. And I stayed really stuck in that fear for the majority of my 20s. I stayed stuck in that fear. It completely paralyzed me from doing anything, even
Fear of
though like
failure.
I think fear of failure slash fear of also potentially success. I
Mm.
think that I was really afraid of, well, what happens if it turns out that I'm actually, capable of doing these things. I had a lot of mindset blocks around money for a really long time. It's still something I'm continuing to work through, but I thought that I was just going to just become a really bad person, which turns out is not the case. When you're born an angel, you're just stay an angel. But no, you know what I mean? Like I really had a lot of, I was like, what if I change so much? Or like, what if, it doesn't, actually, I remember just as a side note, I remember telling JD, I'm worried about, because like I mentioned, I was seeing a lot of really bad offers where I was literally not making any money. And I talk about this all the time because I think that people are like, 10K a month, that's like, it's going to happen in 30 days or less. Um, Literally when I was a guest on podcasts in October of 2021. I was being a guest on podcasts where they were highlighting top closers. And in October of 2021, I'll never forget it. I was a guest on a podcast. She's a sales trainer. That month, I made $800. $800 as a full-time closer. So, and I talk about this all the time because I want people to actually understand that, you know, it's a journey. It's a journey. It's
Mhm.
like not for a lot of people, you're not going to make 10K right away. Certainly I did not, but yeah, so I spent a lot of time like not making any money. And I remember telling JD at one point, I feel like potentially I'm keeping myself in these quote unquote bad offers where I'm not making any money because I'm afraid of, well, what happens when I actually make 10K? What happens when I make 15K? Like, what if nothing changes and I still feel the way like I don't know it's a difference in who I am as a person. It makes like no impact. And for some reason that really scared me. And JD said to me, if you make that level of income and it doesn't change you, that is the goal. It shouldn't change you. Like who you are as a person, it should just amplify who you are. And so that to me was like the beginning of, mending my relationship with money, like knowing, yeah, it's so true. Like I don't want money to change me. I don't. I want to remain who I am. It's really just about it gives you options, right? And it gives
Yeah.
you the opportunity to do more good with it. So Yeah, all that to say, yeah, I've definitely been like working. I forget what your initial question was, but I just wanted to say like I've worked on a lot of my mindset around money and just opportunities. It's it's a never ending process, I will say.
It's never ending. It's always
Never.
this continual refinement of self, right? Personal development. Right? We were talking about it before we pressed record on the pod, of this journey of sales development being personal development, and how
Mm,
it's just this constant refining of self, right? There's always something that pops up, just when you think you're like, oh, I'm good. It's like, actually, no, there's still more. There's still more. It just never stops. Um, and I want to go into that uh, next. I just want to ask you, what's your favorite part of the sales game?
I know that it sounds really cheesy, but I think truly connecting with people that I love hearing people's stories, and I love that connection piece. And I think that connection, especially in sales, is something that I talk about all the time, because I think everyone has a different way of selling, everyone has their own style. And something that we talk about on my team all the time is really being able to identify what your superpower is
Mm,
and really doubling down on that, right? We all follow a process and a framework, but especially on my team, we're all so different. And for me, it really is that connection piece. And I think that it's something that that authenticity and that connection piece is something that a lot of times I feel like we're forgetting in sales. And so that human connection is something that I really value. um and yeah, I'm just very thankful that I'm part of a team now that really actually fosters that, because I do think in a lot of ways I'm a very unconventional sales rep. I stay in touch with almost everyone that I enroll. Like, I become legitimate friends with them. Like, when I say friends, like, I stay in I'm very, very much still in contact with a lot of people. So that's why I have kind of like a love hate relationship with the word closer, which is what
mm,
we're referred to as
mm-hmm,
in the space. We're called closers. I'm like, it's literally the opposite of what I think that I do, because I think that the word close or closer, it implies the end. Like,
mm-hmm,
it sounds very finite, whereas I feel like it's the opposite. This initial point of contact, this is the beginning of the relationship that I have with a lot of these women that I speak to. So yeah, I would say that that connection piece is probably my favorite part, is that I'm able to talk to so many women that I would never otherwise meet. I'm able to hear their stories. I mean, I sell fitness, which I think is a very, very emotional, for a lot of people, it's
mm-hmm.
very emotional.
Oh
And
yeah.
they're sharing a lot of things that, one of my favorite things to be told on calls is, I've never shared this with anyone before,
Mm,
but.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And so that level of vulnerability, that connection. So I think that connection is kind of what I value, but within that, it's hearing people's backgrounds, hearing people's stories, hearing people's, really intimate details about themselves that they've never shared. That vulnerability. I mean, all of that I love. And it's just a connection that I think you don't really get that in many places. So to be able to be compensated so handsomely, to
mm,
have conversations with women where we're able to be vulnerable with one another, it's a game changer. And to your point, for a lot of for myself, but also for a lot of them, like, it kind of turns into being like a therapy session.
mm-hmm,
And a lot of the things that I have known I had to work through, it showed up for me on calls. Like, resistance to certain things, if it shows up, it kind of to me indicated, oh, this is something that I should really get curious about myself. Like, why am I feeling so much resistance to this particular objection or concern? So that kind of to me was an indication of what I needed to work on. And then when I did and I was able to overcome, that's how I'm able to bring that experience and that self-awareness onto my call. So it's kind of like it's all very intertwined, which I think, again, sales is able to do that. You're able to really, yeah, it's a mirror. I think that sales is a mirror, and it holds, a lot of times our prospects are holding up a mirror to us and showing us what we need to heal within ourselves and what we need to work on.
100%, 100%. So beautifully said. I I don't think it's cheesy, that connection part. I think it's vital. Um, we are compensated, like you said, handsomely for this chosen profession of ours because of what we're providing. And then they are like mini therapy sessions.
Yeah.
The things that people have said on calls. From on the offer I'm on, 95% of the people that I'm working with are women.
Mhm.
95%, right? And it's I've heard everything from, oh, I'm planning on leaving my husband, I haven't shared this with anybody, to just everything that's going on in between, you know and that that concept of the mirror of the other as self, right? And just seeing, and I think that's a huge part that, um it's so funny because the industry itself is so, um predominantly male driven, right? And when masculine energy is too hyper and overdrive, it's just, then it's all about, piff city this and slap the
Mhm.
prospect around, and it's just like, it's such an immature masculinity on when I'm perceiving it. I'm an older dude, and so like I'm seeing these young cats, and I'm like, fellas, you can like kind of, take the edge off and not treat it like however you're treating it, and have more of this, more of this connection, and making sure that's cultivated, because that is so important. It's about that relationship with the other person, and not seeing them as just this transaction.
Mhm.
um I had to do some work with this new offer, because I started last year on one offer, and I was, every time I made a sale, it was like I get so excited, like I was doing a line of cocaine. And so I
Mm.
was tying my physiology with that win, and it was just ridiculous, just what it was doing. And so now I've done this reframe where I'm like, the first thought that I'm cultivating in my mind is, yes, that person's changing their life.
Mm.
Secondary thought is, oh, cool, and I made a little money.
Mhm.
And I find that so much more gratifying, so much more gratifying than like, yeah, dude, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
you know,
It's so true. It's so true. And I think, I was having this conversation with someone, my sales manager the other day, and it was, the mentality going into every single call is, well, first of all, can I even help them? Can I even help them?
mm,
And then if we are able to help them, then helping them make that decision for themselves, like helping the prospect actually organize their thoughts and their pain points, and then getting them to that conclusion, like really, like we talk about in UC, I'm really facilitating that decision. But you know, I do think that I'm in a lot of ways an unconventional sales rep, because if I, let's say I can enroll someone, and this is something, the reason I was having this conversation is because I just did this a few days ago. Told the prospect how much the program was, and she was so committed. She was like, yes, okay, I don't make that much money. I knew exactly how much she made in a month. And she said, before coming on this call, my husband and I discussed, and like, we're okay to put my salary towards this, because it's something that I'm really committed to doing. And after the monthly payments work better for her, she would have $50 left over. And in my mind, I was like, she's willing to do it. She's willing to do it. And I could just, if it was just about the money, I would have done it. But I said to her transparently, I want you to make the best decision for you. And that's what we're here to do. Do I think that you putting your entire monthly salary towards this is the best decision? Like, do I think it's going to put you in a tough spot financially? I do. And I wouldn't feel right doing that. So I offered a different option. I said, let's figure out a way together, and this is what I'm proposing. You're still going to get the same level of support. You're still going to get all of the resource, everything, but we're able to bring it down by X amount. And that's, my sales manager said, you're giving up commission. If you think about it, you're giving up. But I'm like, right, but my paycheck is, in the moment, it's the last thing that I personally care about. It's what is going to be the best decision for this person. And I have no problem parting way with commission if it means that I'm helping this person make the best decision for them, right? And I think that that speaks volumes, because she even said to me at the end of that call, I was just on a call, because she was kind of looking at a couple of different options. And she said, I was on a call with a gentleman 2 days ago, and it was basically just 40 minutes of him preaching to me why I should invest in his program. And she said, I just felt she said, I felt very used. I felt like a transaction. I felt like a dollar sign. And she goes, this has been the exact opposite of that, right? And it's because I think that first and foremost, you just have to care about the person on the other end of the line, like the person that you're talking to. Care about them as a person, care about their overall well-being, not just about, what you're going to gain. And I think that when you're coming from that place, money is, for me anyways, it's always just been a byproduct of the amount of people that I can positively impact. And giving up half of the commission, like I don't even really care about that in the moment. I truly don't care. I'm like, if I'm helping this person and it's the best decision for this person and I'm able to make it work and I'm not putting her in a tough spot all around, like that's the only thing I really care about. And I think just continuing to work out of that integrity, it comes back tenfold. It comes back tenfold. So I think it's just a lesson that I just continue to, yeah, to going back to your point, the paycheck is really, it's a lot. It's probably the last thing that I genuinely think about. It's a byproduct. It's a nice byproduct. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong,
Yeah.
but that's not what drives me in having these conversations by any means.
Yeah. 100%. I never set the timer, by the way, to the show. And so it's
I love
been,
it.
it's and then I was telling you, I was like, we're going to be done by 12:30. And I'm like, it's almost 12:30. So
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I want to land this plane here. It's yeah. I want just one more topic. Do you have a few more minutes so we can just wrap it up?
I have all the time in the world.
Okay, cool. Something that I've been doing also is and this is part of like the daily work, right? I was at the drive-through at Starbucks yesterday before going to Costco, and I was thinking about like, you know, this. I was having this funny thought, like the two things that don't need people to sell it, it's sex and drugs,
Hmm.
right? Those things sell themselves,
Hmm.
right? You don't need a coke dealer to convince you. Like, so so why not do meth or something else? Why cocaine? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's never that guy. It's just like, all right, here you go. But then it becomes a little more difficult when, and I was kind of like looking at this whole thing with as the things that are being sold, especially like, what are we doing? It's health, wealth, and happiness slash relationships. These are things that are being marketed and sold to people to improve their lives. And our jobs were kind of like these, like, facilitators, tour guides in this process, checking in with them, getting them through their fears and stuff like that. So my point is that one of the things, the exercises that I remind myself on a daily is that the other person that we're speaking to on the other end is somebody's mom, somebody's
Hmm.
dad, brother, sister, son, daughter, nephew, cousin, grandma. How would you like that? If you're not treating them with respect, if you're not treating them with love, with care, all the things that you would hope somebody would do the same for your family,
Hmm.
right?
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, that's a really good metric I think to use. But it's true. It's just like I sometimes have asked myself if this was someone that like a friend of mine or a family member. First of all, is this something that I would sell to them? Do I feel fully aligned with this? Do I feel fully confident that this can actually change someone's life? And transparently, I've actually invested in the things that I've sold. So I think that already speaks volumes that this is something that I do believe in. But yeah, it's like getting on these calls and understanding if this was a friend, like, would I feel good about
Mm.
the way that I am approaching this conversation? Do I feel like, yeah, I'm coming from a place of love and truly from a place of service? And if you're not, yeah, I think that you have to really check yourself and figure out what is going on, because it's so true. This other person, it's a human, and this is not a small decision. I think that sometimes we kind of get, um not for me, but I think that sometimes a lot of other sales reps, they almost just get desensitized to what it is that they do, and they just feel like, oh, it's only $5,000, it's only $3,000, like, make the decision now because you said that you were going to change your life. And it's like, this is not a small decision for a lot of people. For most people, it's not a small decision, it's actually a life-changing decision, right? So it's a conversation that requires a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion, a lot of understanding, and it should be evident in the way that you show up on that call.
100%. 100%. I think that's a good place to land this plane on. For
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
My
Yeah.
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah. Cool. We're definitely going to do it again.
Yeah.
Um, so, time for the sign off. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been another episode of The Way of El Marco, episode number 15. Once again, with our guest, Nathalie Asuncion. Did I say your last name right?
You said it perfectly. I didn't even have to prep you for that.
Awesome. Folks, make sure you tell your mom and grandma because you know she likes this kind of stuff. Subscribe wherever the subscribe button is. I can never tell. I'll have to figure it out so I can just point, be like right there. That's been another episode, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good day, good luck, and good night.